So today we are going to cover the subject why bad things happen to good people or understanding the law of karma. Somebody asked me why do bad things happen to good people? Why not call it why do good things happen to bad people? Fine, we can call it that also. But it's about understanding the law of karma. The first day I gave you a background on the Bhagavad Gita. The second day I gave you an idea who is God. The third day we discussed who am I. And when we discussed who am I pointed out that God or Purush impregnates Prakriti because he is the Aham Bij Pradapita. And all living entities consist of an Ansh of the Lord. Mamai Vansho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manashastindriyani Prakriti Stani Karshati. So all of us are Purush, but we have with us the burden of Prakriti. And it's our illusion that we are Prakriti which causes all our suffering and distress and of course cycle of rebirth. In the Mundaka Upanishad, there is a very beautiful verse, and that verse describes Pavakad Visfulinga. Pavakad Visfulinga means from the fire, that is from God, there emerge sparks of the living entities, of the individual souls. So we are sparks who emerge from the fire and eventually we need to return there. The Bhagavad elaborates on this, and the Bhagavad says that God is the fire, we are the sparks, and the smoke that emerges from the fire is Prakriti. And the sparks which make an effort to return to the flames and the fire, these sparks, when they engage in returning back to the fire, they engage in acts of yoga, which means acts by which they reunite or yuj, they reunite with God. So those sparks that make an effort to reunite with God are the sparks who try to re-enter the fire. Those sparks that become further entangled in the smoke or become further entangled in the Prakriti are engaging in what we call as karma, and therefore are subject to the laws of Prakriti, which are the laws of karma also. The 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Bhuta bhava udbhava karo visarga karma samgnitaha. So all activities which go towards the development of the Prakriti aspect of you, these are called karma. So I shall now begin to explain to you how this law of karma acts. And this law of karma acts in very strange and bewildering ways. And in fact, this law of karma, as I pointed out to you, was the cause of paralysis of human society in this subcontinent so many years ago. People were so concerned with their personal selfish salvation that they were abandoning their kingdoms, their kingships, they were abandoning their duties as Kshatriyas, they were abandoning their wives and parents and children, and they were taking to the process of renunciation for the sake of attaining union with God. While this precedes both Buddhism and Jainism, we see this is an example which really was the path that was taken by both Buddha and Mahavir, which is to give up their roles as kings and renounce the world and pursue salvation. And like this, there were so many kings and so many Kshatriyas who were doing it. And the Bhagavad Gita starts with Arjun at the same juncture. Arjun is not terrified of the prowess of the warriors in front of him. He is perfectly capable of dealing with them, even though they are his teachers and his grandfather. He is terrified as to the law of karma and what karma will do to him as a result of the war that he will start or engage in. Therefore, you can look upon the Bhagavad Gita as a karma busting book. It is, in fact, a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. It is a song of God. And one strong theme that runs in the song of God is, don't worry about karma, I will take care of it. So there are many, many examples in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna explains this. But before we go into this, let me tell you something about the law of karma. In the United States, there lives a priest, Jewish priest by the name of Rabbi Kushner. And Rabbi Kushner, as a man of God, was very sincere in his efforts. He looked after the emotional needs of his congregation. He looked after the spiritual needs of his congregation. He glorified God. He wiped tears. He gave hope. People had become hopeless. He alleviated their anxiety and their depression and taught his congregation how to depend on God and have faith in God. But one day, Rabbi Kushner had a terrible shock. His newborn son, who was a source of great joy to him, was soon diagnosed by the pediatrician as suffering from progeria. Progeria, some of you know, is a disease where the child undergoes a rapid aging. And Rabbi Kushner was told that your son will rapidly grow old and he will die of old age before most children reach their adolescence and maturity. So if Rabbi Kushner had any other job, that would be fine. But Rabbi Kushner had a different kind of job. His job was to glorify God, to praise God, to encourage others to have faith in God. And yet, when he came home in the evening, he would have to confront that in his own house, in his own home, in his own family, God had played a cruel joke on him. So Rabbi Kushner thought hard. He says, what have I done wrong? I'm a priest, I'm a man of God, I encourage and I praise God, I help people to have faith in Him, I tell people to love God. And after all that I'm doing, after having dedicated my life to God, I find that God has given me a child with progeria who is dying before my own eyes of old age. What a cruel joke. So Rabbi Kushner had, shall we say, a crisis of faith. How can I go on praising God? How can I keep telling everyone that God is all great, all powerful, that God is wonderful, that God is fair and loving? When I come home and I see this child who is suffering from progeria, who is aging so rapidly that he is literally dying before his eyes. So the answer he thought was, God is all powerful, God is all loving, then why do bad things happen to good people? So either God is not all powerful or God is not all loving, because Rabbi Kushner believed that as a good person, these bad things were not supposed to happen to him. So Rabbi Kushner, he searched his faith or the literature of his faith, and he was unable to find any explanation because it did not contain anything on the law of karma. So finally he wrote a book which became a bestseller in the United States, and that book was called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And in that book he wrote that God is all loving, but unfortunately God is not all powerful. And because God is not all powerful, bad things happen to good people. Of course, that's not how we see it. And therefore, we have an answer and we have an explanation. And we have the law of karma. And I'm going to explain to you a little more about the law of karma. But please understand, the objective is not to understand how to do good karma and avoid bad karma. The purpose of understanding the law of karma is to understand what a terrible, what a confusing law it is, and how, if you try to figure out how to live within the laws of karma, you will only meet unhappiness. And therefore, the answer which is given in the Bhagavad Gita is how to transcend the law of karma. On the face of it, the law of karma is very simple. There is action and there is reaction. There is effort and there is destiny. There is purusharth and there is prarabdha. As you sow, so shall you reap. If you sow the wind, you could reap the whirlwind. One who lives by the sword, he also dies by the sword. These are all examples of what karma is all about. As I explained to you, God is the fire, we are the sparks that emerge from the fire. Prakriti or nature is the smoke that arises from the fire. If we make an effort to go back to the fire, that is an act of yoga. If we make an effort to get further entangled in the smoke, those are acts of karma. There are many types of karma. There is good karma and there is bad karma. So let's get through that first. Good karma means that if you do good with the idea, I am doing good, and while you are acting with that idea that I am doing good, you are performing what is called as punya, or acquiring good karma. So if you do good to somebody's body, that good will come back to you. In the same way, if you do good for somebody's mind, that good will come back to you in the same way. If you do good for somebody's intelligence, that will also come to you in the same way. And if you do good for somebody's ego, that will also come back to feed your ego in course of time. And the good that you do is not just good which will help you in this body. It will not only come back to you while you are in this life, but this good that you do will also help you in the next life. In the universal bank of karma, as long as your credit is good, you will keep enjoying the good karma that you have created. Let me give you an example. because it not only helps you in this life and helps you in the next life, but even in the interval between two lives, you are given a sojourn in what they call as Swarg. Swarg is not a permanent abode, but Swarg, which is often compared to the word heaven, is only a temporary abode. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Te tam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam kshine punya martyalokam vishanti. Having exhausted your credits in Swarglok, you must come back and take rebirth again in this world. So it's a temporary abode. It's like if you pay for a holiday, let us say for 3 days and 2 nights, when you go to the hotel or the resort, they will welcome you, they will feed you according to the credit that you have. You will have a very good time at the resort or hotel. But when those 2 nights and 3 days are over, will they insist that you stay there permanently? No matter how much they like you, no matter how much you tip them, they will tell you, sir, come back again. And when you pay for the next round, when you have sufficient credit for more days, he'll be happy to welcome you again. That is exactly what Swarg is. So you go to Swarg for the good karma you have done. After enjoying the good karma in this life, you enjoy the fruits of the good karma in heaven. And having enjoyed the good karma in heaven, in Swarglok, you come back again into Martyalok. You come back again into this place of birth and death. And in the next life also, if your credit is good, you will continue to enjoy that good karma. Traditionally, the method to enjoy good karma in heaven and in the next birth was the performance of karma kanda or Vedic yajna. In the Adi Puran, Arjuna asked Krishna that, my dear Krishna, I would like to go to heaven. But although I'd like to go to heaven, I'm not inclined to performing all these Vedic yajnas and yagnas and all that. So can you give me an easier way by which to get good karma so that I may go to heaven and enjoy the benefits in the next life? So Krishna tells him in the Adi Puran, Annadav jaladas chaiva aturascha chikitsaka trividham swargam ayanti vina yagnena o bharata. If you give food, if you give water, if you give medicines to those who are deserving, those who are hungry, those who are without water, those who have no medicines, then having performed these good deeds, when you leave this body, you will go to Swarg without performing any fire sacrifice. So the benefits of good karma are in this life, in going to heaven in between lives, and you will get the benefit in the life after that also. Let me give you a practical example. Very close to the VT office, there was a plot of land. It's practically walking distance. We don't mind a short walk. And this was owned by one gentleman who thought that he wanted to earn good karma. So he first wanted to sell that land and he wanted to feed thousands of Brahmins in Kashi. So one famous ENT surgeon went to him and told him that, see, if you feed the Brahmins, even thousands of them, your good karma will last only as long as that food nourishes those Brahmins. Once it is excreted and evacuated, your good karma is gone. And therefore, you will not be able to stay in heaven. Neither will you continue to enjoy that benefit in your next life. So why don't you use that land to create a hospital? And if you create a hospital, I will see to it that the municipal corporation will take over that hospital and will maintain that hospital. And as long as that hospital continues to provide services to the people, so long you will continue to avoid exiting from Swarg. And in the event that you are reborn, you will continue to get all the good karmic benefits of having put up the hospital. So he agreed. And today, if you go near the original VSNL tower, across from the VSNL tower, at the end of Napier Road, there is a hospital which is called Atma Singh Jaisa Singh Banke Bihari Kan Nag Ghasa Municipal Hospital. And when you see that hospital and you see its functioning, you will know that Atma Singh Jaisa Singh Banke Bihari is continuing to enjoy the good karma that he has provided for his heaven and his next lives. There is also what we call as bad karma. Bad karma means if you cause harm to another living entity, and that harm which you cause to another living entity may be harm to their body, harm to their life. And that's not just for living, not just for human beings, but the harm you cause to animals also. So that harm which you cause to other living entities, to their body, to their mind, to their intelligence or their intellect, or to the harm that you cause to their ego, God forbid, all that harm shall come back to you. And that harm will come back to you and it will give you suffering in identical and similar ways. If you have taken somebody's life, your life will thereby also be affected. If you have committed acts of violence, that violence will enter your life. And that violence that enters your life may not necessarily be only in the form of physical violence, but it will be in the form of violent thoughts, violent words, violent attitudes. So the pain and suffering that you cause to other living entities comes back to you. In the interval between two lives, what happens is that you have to go to a place of suffering which is called Narak. And that place of suffering called Narak, you will have to endure this kind of suffering that you have caused here on the earth. And having suffered in those hells that are there, you, as long as your negative balance continues, you will suffer there and then be reborn. And as long as your negative balance continues in the law of karma, you will continue to have bad things happening to you in your life and your lives thereafter. This is what is bad karma. And do not think, some of you might be accountants here and you might believe that, there is double entry bookkeeping and assets and liabilities can get, cancelled out. But between bad karma and good karma, please understand that they do not cancel each other out. So if you have done 15 good karmas and you have done 10 bad karmas, you don't have 5 good karmas left in balance. You have to enjoy those 15 good karmas and you have to suffer those 10 bad karmas. There is no way that one bad karma will cancel the good karma or vice versa. This is very important to understand because this is a common foolish belief that people have, that I shall become free from my bad karma by doing some good karma. Good and bad karma do not cancel each other at all. Please also understand that don't think that I am not affected by karma because I have no faith in this law of karma. Well, perhaps I have belonged to some other religion and I am not supposed to think and believe in this law of karma. It doesn't act like that. The law of karma is independent of your religion. The law of karma is independent of your faith. Whether you have faith or you don't have faith, it doesn't matter. You must enjoy or suffer the karmic consequences of your deeds. And you might think I'm very influential, oh, I'm close to this Swami, oh, I'm very close to this holy person, and therefore, with the blessings of this holy person, I will be protected from the bad karma I have done. Is another common foolish belief. It's not like, I don't know if you, I guess somewhere in the north they say that people are always saying, Mera baap kone malum hai? Mera baap kone malum hai? So you might think that because of your proximity to a holy person, my father was very saintly and so on and so forth. So I will be protected from karma. It doesn't work like that. To give you an example, there is a famous story of Maharaj Dashrath. And Maharaj Dashrath kills Shravan Kumar. And having killed Shravan Kumar, you might think that after all, Dashrath is the father of Ram, he's the father of God in his incarnation. Therefore, he should be protected from karma. But no, Dashrath is not protected from karma. And not only is he not protected from karma, but he must suffer in the same way as Shravan Kumar's parents, and being parted from his son Ram, he dies similarly of heartbreak. So, bad karma does not cancel good karma. And not only does bad karma not cancel good karma, but you are not protected by your lack of faith in karma. You cannot say, I was ignorant of the law of karma. If you park your car in a place where there is no parking and someone comes to give you a ticket and you say, oh, but please excuse me, I did not know, I didn't see the no parking sign. Do you think you're going to get away with it? So also, ignorance of the law of karma is not protection against the karmic consequences that one needs to suffer. And what is worse, you can never be sure that you're doing good karma or you're doing bad karma. Occasionally, you try to do good karma and you land up getting bad karma. I think all of you here at some time in your life must have tried to do good to somebody. And when you tried to do good to somebody, unfortunately it backfired. That person got upset, he got disturbed, or she got disturbed, and then said, you caused all this suffering to me. I'm sure all of you have had this occasion where you tried to do good for somebody and that backfired and you got abused and cursed. So you tried to do good karma and you landed up getting bad karma. This is also explained in the Bhagavad. There's a story of King Riga who wants to do good karma, and therefore he is giving cows with full udders, with lots of milk, with calves who have accompanying them, tall white cows with big udders, and he is giving them in charity to the Brahmanas. But unfortunately, because some cows wander back into his fold, he gives the same cow twice. And two Brahmanas start having a fight saying, this is my cow, this has been given to me. So King Mriga says that, look here, forget about these cows. I will give both of you fresh cows, better cows, and twice the number of cows. But they were already disturbed and they were angry. And they cursed King Mriga. So King Mriga tried to do good karma and landed up getting bad karma. And therefore, when Yamaraj comes for him at the time of death and he's asked, would you like to have your good karma first or your bad karma first? He says, I'll finish off with my bad karma, thank you. And he becomes a lizard in a well. And then King Mriga, he wants to become free from karma altogether. He says, good karma, bad karma, forget it. I just want to get out of this. And then he prays to Krishna and he is delivered. There are also very wonderful examples of a person who tries to do bad karma and lands up with good karma. There is a hunter who is traveling to a forest and he comes across a tigress who is drinking water from a lake. Now, by the laws of hunting, even if you're killing a predator who is a source of danger, you're not supposed to shoot it when it is mating, when it is eating, or when it is drinking. You're also not supposed to create, because to do so would be to create bad karma. But the hunter says, no, doesn't matter, let me kill him, kill her. So he kills the tigress. And suddenly, from the skies, the Devatas begin showering lotus petals and they start drumming and playing music for him. And all the villagers come out, because although it was incorrect that he killed the animal and should have created bad karma for him, that animal was a man-eating animal. It was a crippled and blind man-eating animal. And by killing that man-eating animal, he had saved the lives of so many villagers. So he thought that he was doing bad karma, but he landed up doing good karma. Another example that is given is about a priest, a monk, who is sitting in deep meditation in the forest. And sitting in the forest in deep meditation, a person comes running past him and goes and hides in a cave. So the soldiers come running behind him. And when the soldiers come running behind him, they ask the sage, have you seen somebody running past here? And the sage said, I can only do good karma. Therefore, I tell only the truth. So he says, can you tell me where he is hiding? So he says, I can only tell the truth and support law and order. So there he is hiding in the cave. So the soldiers go and arrest the man. And when they arrest the man and they take him, they kill him cruelly. And because he was wrongly accused and wrongly chased and wrongly tortured and killed, the entire bad karma comes upon the sage. So please try to understand the difference between good karma and bad karma is more complex than you imagine. And very often when you think that you're doing good karma for somebody, you will find out that person gets upset with you, and then you will realize that you have actually done bad karma. There are also many types of karma. There is instant karma. For example, if you are thirsty and you drink a glass of water, your thirst goes away. That's instant karma. If you go in a very difficult and troubled part of the town and you go and slap the first ruffian you meet on the road, well, he'll slap you back and more. That is instant karma. There is also delayed karma. And in understanding delayed karma is the secret behind understanding how karma works. And what do you mean by how delayed karma works? For example, if you feel that you have been constipated and you take a Dulcolax tablet, nothing will happen. But 6 to 8 hours later, that Dulcolax tablet will act on you and all your constipation will be relieved. So there is a gap of 8 hours between the time you took the tablet and the time your constipation was relieved. This delay makes it delayed karma. I will give you an example from medical college, where in medical college, one of the boys was playing the fool to impress the girls in the class. And the professor who was taking the class was so annoyed with him, he told him, "Get out of the class." And this guy put up his collar and, combed his hair and waving at all the girls in the class like a big hero, he left the classroom. 1.5 years later, when he was appearing for the examination, the viva voce examination, the oral examination, sitting across him from the table was the same professor with whom he had misbehaved. And he failed that exam. And he had to repeat his session. He had to repeat that 1 year. So therefore, you should understand that the actions you do now may not bear fruit immediately, but they will bear fruit after some time. And that gap between the performance of the action and the experiencing of the consequence of the action makes it what we call as delayed karma. Until then, it is known as the seed karma that lies inside of you, which is called the sanchit karma. It is the seed karma that lies inside of you, waiting to sprout. There is an example given in the Mahabharata, and in the Mahabharata there is the example given of Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra, after the battle of Kurukshetra is over, goes to Krishna and says that, "Krishna, I want an explanation. Why was I born so unfortunate? Why was I born in a manner wherein I was born blind, and although I had 100 sons, all 100 of these sons died within my lifetime? Why did I suffer like this? Please explain to me." So Krishna explains to Dhritarashtra that 50 lifetimes ago, please note the word 50 lifetimes ago. 50 lifetimes ago, Krishna says to Dhritarashtra, you were a hunter and you and your wife went hunting and you saw 2 swans with 100 baby birds or cygnets, and you threw a flaming net on these cygnets, on these baby swans. You threw a flaming net, and 100 of these baby swans were roasted to death. So therefore he says, you also had to suffer in the same way. So Dhritarashtra complains, he says, what kind of nonsense is this? 50 lifetimes ago, I burnt 100 baby swans, so 50 lifetimes later I should suffer 100 sons being killed? Why could I not suffer for it in the next lifetime or the same lifetime? Why did I have to wait 50 lifetimes? So Krishna explains to Dhritarashtra that, my dear Dhritarashtra, before you can have even one son, you have to have a good deal of punya. To have even one child requires a good deal of punya. To have a child of a particular sex of your choice, that requires a great deal more karma. So in each lifetime, you accumulated enough good karma to have two sons. And then when 50 lifetimes are over and you had accumulated enough good karma to pay for the sins that you had committed, then you could have 100 sons born to you, and then you could be born blind, and then these 100 sons could perish in your lifetime. So before you can pay, you should actually have the ability to pay. So suppose you have a court case against somebody and that person wins the court case and you have to pay him 100 lakh rupees or 1 crore rupees. But when the bailiff comes to your house to tell you to pay up, you don't have the money. So what happens? Is that gone? No, it is suspended until you have the ability to pay. And when you have accumulated that 1 crore, then you can pay that 1 crore according to the judgment that was delivered against you. So also, when you commit bad karma, if you don't have the ability to suffer the consequence of that action you have performed, then indeed you have to wait until you have accumulated enough good karma so that you can discharge through the consequence of the bad karma you have earlier created. Of course, sometimes people feel that you don't need good karma to have a child, but you just need a good IVF specialist. You just need a good gynecologist. And I'd like to share with you the story of somebody who tried to overcome his karma in that way. So I had a colleague who was also a doctor, but he came from a business community. And it was very important for him to have a male son. So he had 2 girls. And he came and told me that what I plan to do is I plan to get my wife pregnant. And then I'm going to do a pregnancy test. And this was, many, many years ago. And having done that pregnancy test, I will do a sex determination with the amniotic fluid. And if the sex determination shows that it is a girl, then I will abort the child. And if the sex determination with the amniotic fluid shows that it is a boy, I will preserve the pregnancy. I said, is that even legal? He says, don't talk about legal, illegal. Hum to sab manage kar denge. And sure enough, he got his wife pregnant. And he got the amniotic fluid examined in the best laboratory using his contacts. And the report came that it was a girl. So he went to another friend of his who was the best gynecologist. And he had that child aborted. And when he had that child aborted, and the aborted child was pulled out from the womb, he discovered the child was a boy. In trying to circumvent the law of karma, he had fulfilled it. So, we should understand what karma is, what good karma is. We should understand what bad karma is. We should understand they don't cancel each other out. We should understand that there is instant karma. We should understand there is delayed karma. We should understand that there is also what we call as mass karma. See, there is what is known as Sangha Dosh. Sangha Dosh means if you keep the association of people who are engaged in bad deeds, then that bad karma runs onto you. You acquire that bad karma. If you go with if you don't drink, if you don't watch the Nach Gana, but you go there, turn your back to the women who are dancing, and you don't drink, but you're seated with all those people, friends of yours, and there is a raid on that dance bar, you will get arrested. You will be charged. You can say, I was not drinking. You can say, I wasn't looking at those girls, but you will be charged nonetheless. So also, Sangha Dosh results in what we call as mass karma. When you keep the association, when you live with, when you travel with, when you are with people who are engaged in sinful activity, then that Sangha Dosh results in mass karma, and that mass karma causes your suffering. So this is why even in the Bible there's example of Sodom and Gomorrah, where God tells his devotees to leave them behind, leave those cities behind, because they are destined for destruction. So whole cities are destroyed. So by living in a city where bad karma has been performed, you are indirectly becoming party to experiencing the bad karma of the inhabitants of that city. So whether it's in travel, whether it is living in a city that experiences riots or bomb blasts, these are all examples of mass karma. So you have good karma, you have bad karma, you have instant karma, you have delayed karma, you have mass karma, you have purusharth and you have prarabdha. Purusharth is the effort that you put in. Prarabdha is the result of that effort which you have put in. For example, there is a very famous story of how prarabdha acts. Just to give you an idea, when you have performed some action and that action has resulted in the development of some fruit and you are enjoying the fruit, you ask, why can't I change this? For example, if you are born into a family, that is your prarabdha. So your parents, the community you're born into, all of that is your prarabdha. The body that you have, the intelligence that you have, the genes that you possess, these are all part of your prarabdha. The genetic package you carry, which says blood pressure at this age, diabetes at this age, cancer at this age, heart attack at this age, stroke at this age, this is all part of your prarabdha. Of course, can you do something about your prarabdha? Yes, there are many things you can do about your prarabdha. And putting in purusharth is one of them. So there are many types by many ways by which you can work with your prarabdha and try to overcome it. So for example, in some cases, the prarabdha is very mild and you can overcome it very easily. So it's like chalk has been written on a blackboard, and you go with a wet cloth and you clean that writing on the wall. This is one way of removing mild prarabdha. Then you have prarabdha which is more difficult to remove. You're trying to clean your bathroom tiles But in cleaning your bathroom tiles are so dirty that no soap, no water, no toothbrush can remove them. But then you can use bathroom acid on those tiles. And then that acid can remove that dirt from the tiles. The third is somebody gives you a glass of very, very, very sour lassi. And you try to put sugar in that lassi, but it simply doesn't work. The sourness still comes through. And then you decide that let me make that lassi into chas. So you take that glass of lassi and you dilute it with a full bucket of clean, pure water and convert it into chas. You can reduce the sourness, it will not go away, but definitely it will become drinkable. Therefore, in the Yoga Vasishtha, it has been described that there are Purusharth and Prarabdha are like two male sheep or rams who are banging their heads together. Whichever is stronger, whichever is more powerful, wins. So Purusharth and Prarabdha, both of them counter one another. So if you have a Prarabdha that you do not like, you can apply Purusharth and Purusharth can take away your Prarabdha. There are many people who are born, let us say, and in a body which is male and they want to be female. Or they're born in a body which is female and they want to become male. And that is their prarabdha. But they can undergo purusharth, which means they have to undergo, first of all, certification that they are qualified for that surgery by undergoing psychiatric and psychoanalytical diagnosis. They have to go to an endocrinologist who will prepare their body. And they have to go to a sex change surgeon who will change their sex. This is an example of Purusharth versus Prarabdha. And by taking up this Purusharth and you overcome the Prarabdha. So this is how Purusharth and Prarabdha can be used, and Purusharth can overcome the Prarabdha. Different people experience their karma in different ways. And the different ways they experience them is dependent on their gunas. So if you are designed by prarabdha to, let us say, fast or go without food for a day, the person who's in tamagun may become drunk. And being drunk, he will lie in a stupor and thereby he will be hungry for that day. Another man who has the same prarabdha, but he is in the mood of, shall we say, rajagun or passion. He has a fight with his wife and refuses to eat her food. And thereby he experiences the same suffering, which is that he does not have food for one day. Then you have a sattva-guni person who is also supposed to go without food for a day. But he realizes that it's a day of a holy fast. And he takes this occasion to fast for that day and acquire punya. But in actual fact, he is also undergoing the suffering of going without food for a day. So these are all examples and differences of how people experience their prarabdha. But Purusharth is always there, and with Purusharth, you should overcome your prarabdha. In fact, the Yoga Vasishtha and other scriptures point out that if you ever come across somebody who says everything is written here, this is my prarabdha, you should treat him as if he is suffering from an infectious disease. And you should ignore him and you should walk away from him, because otherwise you will also get infected by this dreadful disease which is called karma. Now you can understand, when you heard something about karma, that Arjun begins the Bhagavad Gita with all his arguments, which are based on the law of karma. And with all arguments that are based on the law of karma, he says, if I kill all these people, only sin will overcome me, because I will kill the elders in the family. And when I kill the elders in the family, what will happen? Moral standards will perish, because it is the old elders who keep the moral standards of the family and the clan. When these elders are killed and there are no moral standards, when the men are destroyed, the women will become immoral, and there will be all kinds of unwanted population. And all of this will result in dreadful sin, and all this sin will come upon me. So all this bad karma, Arjun says, is the bad karma that will come upon me. So Arjun's argument is that look at this terrible law of karma, because this terrible law of karma is what is going to destroy me. I may be the best warrior, I may be able to kill my gurus and my uncle and my cousins and everybody. But ultimately, I will be defeated by karma, and karma will destroy me. And I am afraid of karma. And because I am afraid of karma, I will have to undergo this suffering. So, I'll pause here if you have any questions, because I'm definitely not going to finish it in this session. We'll have to continue it in the next session. And I'll tell you something more about the law of karma and how Krishna gives us an idea on how to overcome it. If you have any questions on what I have covered so far on karma, please go ahead and ask me any questions that you've got. Yes, Anurag asked me that in the book is written not by, by any authority. The book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People, is written by Rabbi Kushner, and that is his flawed, error-prone conclusion that God is not all-powerful. God is all-powerful. God is all-loving. And bad things don't happen to good people. And good things don't happen to bad people. There are no good people, there are no bad people. Everything matters as a consequence to actions that you perform. So if you perform an action, there is a reaction. If you put in some effort, there is a destiny. If you put in purusharth, there is a prarabdha. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Anurag. God is all powerful, and we will be doing in detail what God says about the law of karma. Anyone has any other questions, please feel free to ask. We have, I think, 5 minutes. Yes, Ramanji, we are going to answer your question that what is the answer Arjun got from Krishna. We are going to do this in the next class, because obviously karma is too big a topic to cover now. So I will be covering it in the next class. Normally when I give this lecture, it's given over a weekend with 3 lectures, or it's given in a, at least in 2 lectures, or it's given over 2 hours plus. So 1 hour is not sufficient to cover this subject matter, but I will cover more of it, and I assure you I will cover it in full detail. Anyone else has any questions, please go ahead and ask me.
Doctor, I have a question. My name is Abhishek.
Yes, Abhishek.
Doctor, now that we heard from you about the concept of Purusharth, Prarabdha, and the law of karma. I mean, what is the takeaway for us from what I say is that in this birth or in this current form, we don't know what is the karma bank that we have with us. We don't even know that the results that are coming are for lack of purusarth, or if it's a predetermined parak. So with all this uncertainness in this current birth, what is the course of action that a human being should take? What is, I mean, after knowing all this and after being convinced by all this, but still unknowing about our karma bank or our history, then what is our duty? How do we function
So I'll give you a
and
short
do
answer
that?
now to hold you till the next class, but the next class will answer it in proper detail. But the answer is both good karma and bad karma. In fact, all types of karma don't have a simple answer. And the more you try to get into karma, the more complicated it will become. And people who have tried to overcome karma have landed up getting further involved in it and more entangled in it and suffering greater and greater. You are Purush situated in a body of Prakriti, a mind, intelligence, and body made of Prakriti. You have to understand that you are Purush and not Prakriti. You have to stop engaging in acts of karma and you have to engage in acts of yoga. Like the spark who has emerged from the fire, you have to return to the flames. You do not have to get further involved in the smoke. So the answer to the law of karma is not getting involved in karma at all. And to get free from karma completely, you have to learn to transcend karma. And that is what Bhagavad Gita is about. Bhagavad Gita is explaining that how to cross beyond the karma. I hope that gives you some answer.
Yes, doctor. But how to do that, I'm hoping that you will cover in your subsequent
Yes, the
lectures.
details I will tell you, but the point really is that don't get involved in karma. Leave it aside. Get involved in acts of yoga. Get involved in activities that help you to reconnect with God. Don't be a spark who gets lost in the smoke. Become that spark which goes back to the fire.
Sure, doctor.
So the details will be answered in the next class. I will continue that in the next class. Anyone else has any other questions? So Ramanji is asking me that do we then believe that whatever actions and reactions we face on a daily basis is the result of karma? Indeed, everything that we experience as a composite of Prakriti and Purush, as long as we are deluded that we are Purush, as long as we are deluded that we are Prakriti, because we believe we are the mind, intelligence, and ego and this body, so long we are experiencing the results of karma not just on a daily basis, we are experiencing karma on a moment-to-moment basis. Ramanji, does that answer your question? Are there any questions or have we concluded today? Lavina? The admin? Have we completed? Class was from 8 to 9. Is it now 9?
Yes, doctor, it is 9:05.
Yeah, because I'm in a different part of the world. That's why the class is. All right.
Okay.
So thank you very much. We will take up, I'm sorry I couldn't complete in one session, but we will do further things in the next session and we will explain all this. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor.
Yeah, Jai Shri